Welcome along, one and all, to round 2 of the APPF1 F2 Cup for Season 8. We are here at the iconic and eternal Temple of Speed. Monza is the host of the second round of this championship, and well, after 3 races done in the F1 cars, and of course I'm certainly someone that could admire the tactical wizardry of managing batteries in these cars. I'm certainly looking forward to some good old-fashioned hard racing out there in these F2 cars, and that is what we're going to be treated to here tonight very, very shortly as we get diving in. Of course, such this quick-fire F2 format, we go straight into one-shot quali. Let's see how it's going to unfold. I'll randomly pick out a driver. Koru, we will watch along for this lap. Here in one-shot quali, we shall see how it unfolds as we hit the line. Now away we go. So let's see how this Temple of Speed is approached by Koru, running down towards the Del Rettifilo first chicane. Now looking to try and spot that braking point just past 150 metres, down into second gear. Nails that first apex. Very easy to lose the rear of the second apex. You can see Koru practically tiptoeing around that to make sure he keeps that rear end nicely in check. Another full throttle blast in. Of course, so much of this lap is spent at full blast as you set up the end of the first sector and the Variante della Roggia, arguably the most difficult corner on the entire track. That inside curve you have to be wary of. Koru again taking a more roundabout way, not opting to use those curves too aggressively, keeping it nice and clean as he heads in towards the Lesmos. Just getting a bit of the inside curve on the first one. The second one, he flies it in and manages to nail that exit as Runes out of the session. Sadly enough, that's going to leave him with an awful lot of work to do in both races. Of course, it is just the top 10 that gets reversed, so work to do for the Campos as Koru hits the last sector, clipping that curve on the inside of Ascari. The game lets you get away with just a little bit. Silbo out of the session too, so a couple of drivers being eliminated. So easy to invalidate, of course, at this track. Koru, though, heading along in contention with Fortuna leading the way as they head towards the curve of Alboreto to close up this lap, and Koru makes that apex nicely. Very difficult to do that, and now it's a blast of the line with Ghost battling away with Fortuna. Up towards the line they go. It's going to be very tight, I suspect, but Ghost has it, and by the slimmest of margins. Look at that top 4. Ghost by, I think, 0.07 of a second by my very quick and crude maths. We'll tidy up the order later on, but absolutely minuscule differences among the top 4. But it is indeed Ghost who has it from Wreck by a margin of 0.07 of a second. 0.08 of a second further back, you have the high tech of Fortuna, and then 200ths further back, no less, is QVR Verstappen in 4th place. And well, those 2 and 3 and 4 were probably the 2 favourites going into this race, but they show that there is competition out there. Koru comes next, and Jacolacco, 3/10 covering them. Then Reshka, Polang, JB, Rubialski, Lawrence, and Canalflo, the rest of the drivers who did manage to set valid times. But wow, what a qualifying session that sets up. Of course, one thing I didn't take too much note of, actually, which I should have done, was who qualifying in P10. Just looking back at the screen, it was indeed Rubialski who locked up that P10 just ahead of JB. And yeah, the top 7 covered by just 0.4 of a second. Incredible stuff out there, and that, if that's a sign of things to come for the race, then do not go anywhere. It's going to be another cracker. So we still set up and look forward, of course. We'll see what the strategies are going to be. I see soft tire selected. That is actually the harder tire in the range. It's the softs and the super softs, and of course usually it's the harder compound that you go for on the in these events. So we'll see now for the sprint races. We get underway. And we're away with Rubialski leading them off the lane. JB will look to challenge him, but there's threats coming from behind too. Rubialski covering across. Polang, as he always does, on the move off the start. But Rubialski covering off that inside line well. Under brakes, pressure from JB on the outside. Can't quite make it through though. Reshka hopping the curb side by side with Polang as both of them pile through on the exit as they filter through the end of the first sector. And it's still Rubialski who leads. Polang in that compost, just managing to clear Reshka, who tucks in behind and looks for more. Up in front, JB picking up that slipstream 2 on Rubialski. Down towards the second sector, and it's still Rubialski leading the way. We'll bring the tyres choices up. Palangs looks like he's made an error heading through De La Roggia, dropping a couple of spots, then maybe just overshooting that on the brakes and getting caught on a curb. He slips down into P6, has QVR Verstappen right with him too. So very, very keen early on, but Palang making that error. Fortuna's made a cracking start up into that 4th place, chasing down Reshka, who managed to eventually get the best of that battle with Palang again. Not sure how Palang managed to drop back, but not in a great position. Pressured from QVR Verstappen behind now as they head on the run to the curve at Alboreto. Off the road there, it looks like it was Jackalacco in P8. He's 3 places down off the start, and up in front, Fortuna's looking for another side-by-side with Reshka going into the final corner. Gets that shorter run through. Reshka carrying good speed though around the outside and is going to stay level as they hit the main straight, but it looks like Fortuna just getting the drag, has a bit of the slipstream too from the Prima of JB up in front of him, and that in the end makes a difference. So he moves up into 3rd place, a storming first lap. QVR Verstappen further back, tracking Palang, looking towards the outside of the first chicane, braking very, very late, trying to stick that one around. Can he hang on in there though as they look for the exit? They squirm around as we've got action down there. Jackalacco's gone off the road at the first chicane. Didn't see what happened there, but clearly I imagine just overshooting. So that's work to be done for Jackalacco. Verstappen still chasing down Palang. Looks towards the inside and brakes late. Brakes daringly, but is pinched right onto the inside. That very aggressive from the Campos. Still covering off as they hit the Lesmos is further up in front. Fortuna looks for yet another. That is P2 for the Swede. What a start. Reshka on the inside of JB, not fully committing though at Lesmo 2, and understandably, but that leaves him vulnerable to the streaking AIX of Koru, who pounces up on the outside on the run towards Ascari. So they go side by side. Koru looking for a place. Is Reshka gonna stick in it on the brakes? He is indeed gonna fight for that inside line. Pinched on the apex, bit of contact through the second apex, still side by side on the exit, but momentum favours Koru and he slips round into that 4th place. Great racing between those two, and Reshka's got to look out as Palang darting down the outside and QVR Verstappen following him through then. So Reshka dropping back, Verstappen into the back of Palang in front of him. Manages to get away, I think without damage, switches to the inside, squeezed by Reshka onto the grass for the championship leader. Has to try and regather it up, loses out to Rick in the process though, has no momentum. Selbo's made a great start, drawing up alongside, and Who Am I had a storming debut last time out in Catalunya, is on the move and attacking, and to the inside of the ART, who's in big trouble. Oh, up in front, and that was going long in the braking zone. I think Selbo Bags peeling off the road, and he's tagged. I think Ghost has dropped all the way back in the order, or maybe I didn't quite see who he caught, unfortunately, but chaos down there at the first chicane here at Monza, as unfortunately is so often the case. Crucial midfield battling here, and it's Silbo who continues to drop down the order after getting caught out at that chicane. Nearly comes together with Canal Flow there at the rear of the field. But that is desperate trouble for the Rodin at this early stage of the race, and a severely jeopardised sprint effort now to go forward here at Monza. Up at the front, Rubialski still manages to sustain the lead, but being pressured and pressured hard by Fortuna. JB comes next, still sticking in the mix with those top two, as he did, of course, early on in the sprint last time out at Catalunya. But Fortuna looks ominous here. So quick in these F2 cars generally, and has Rubialski put to the sword. And with Verstappen being pegged back on the last lap as well, it's a big opportunity for the high-tech. Of course, his teammate Jordan DHL, who sits second in the standings, not present here tonight. So it's really room for Fortuna to get back in that title fight, which he has clearly got the pace to try and threaten for the lead. He's going to do now, picking up that slipstream and moving to the outside, and I don't think there's much that Rubialski can do to prevent it. Through goes Fortuna to the lead, and they still battle on behind. Who Am I? Up 9 spots in this race, side by side, as off the road is JB at the first chicane, as Who Am I is squeezed out right, and Reshka and Ghost trying to take advantage. Ghost pinched to the edge of the track, and side by side now with his teammate of all people there. Verstappen though has managed to slot his way through up into 5th place under heavy pressure though. Palang slots in behind Koru, Ghost on the inside of Reshka, and the two of them have to watch out there in those Van Amersfoort cars. I cannot keep up with all the cars sliding off the road. It's Jackalacco going slowly out of De La Roggia and dropping back several places. Then there's just so many movers and shakers, but Jackalacco severely compromised and just having to see off Bacon Bear down there at Lesmo too. Wow, what a chaotic start to this race, and it's certainly far from over. Palang moving to the inside of Koru, and I thought they may, for a moment, just get caught on one another, but they managed to get away with it and continue on as Jacko moves past Rick, and these two legends of this F2 Cup, Jacko Lacko himself with 2 race wins in the past at this track, but they are currently suffering outside of the top 10 at the moment. Of course, they will still soldier on. There are still points for the top 12 here in this sprint race, so at the moment they both occupy those, but certainly not the race that they were looking for. Fortuna still leads. Rubialski though has managed to stay with him, and there's still scrapping behind as Koru coming back towards Palang and moving to the outside, trying to get it done into De Rettifilo. Can he get it done? Round the long way round, gets pinched by the Campos car, and QVR Verstappen, just as he does on the last lap, trying to pinch his way through. He's on the outside line of Koru as they race through at Curva Grande, but he has to yield. It doesn't quite have the speed with Koru in the slipstream of Palang, and now trying to take advantage more. Gets pinched out though, and QVR Verstappen positions his car well on the inside, but Koru hangs on. Can he get the exit though? Verstappen got a good one, and he's up on the inside, going down towards the Lesmo one. Can he stick it in there? Commits very early to the turn in and nearly goes around. There's contact between the two of them. Verstappen just getting onto the grass at the apex. There was damage to someone, I think that's Who Am I, as he came through. Goes past his teammate, but did he just catch him on the way through? Watch for that front wing. I think there may be a left end plate missing. So for the again, the man who had such a storming debut last time out in Catalonia and has had an incredible start to this race, up 10 positions. What can be done in the future in this race, currently sitting in P5. Again, we'll verify that damage, see what's what in that situation. He still chases QVR Verstappen as they head towards Curva Alboreto, but struggling to follow through the apex. It doesn't seem too major the damage, if any, but there it is. You can see clearly on that left-hand side end plate, and that is going to be a big handicap for him later on in this race. Koru with Ghost all over the back of him as they head down the straight. Koru moving over, covering off that inside line, back to the outside. Ghost switches late to the inside and late on the brakes. Can he get that one stopped? He can indeed, but Koru's still there on the inside line. Ghost with traction on the way out, and that is a spectacular move from the former F2 Cup champion in his own right. He goes through into P6, and Reshka, his teammate, will look to try and follow suit. Can Koru fight back? It'd have to be an audacious dive on the brakes, and I don't think that is what he's going to opt for, and indeed he slots in. That was spectacular stuff from Ghost. Moving up into P6, of course, the pole setter for the feature race. And despite a rocky start to this race, he is doing all he can to try and make best of this sprint race. Up at the front, it's an endless fight for Rubialski to stay in DRS range of Fortuna, being stretched to the limit every single lap. He's just about able to hang in there for the time it being, but only just. And I imagine through Ascari, the pressure is going to continue to mount. That high tech is just blistering fast everywhere on the course as Reshka picks up a time penalty. Currently only loses out to Lawrence and Runes at the moment, but is going to need a lot of work later on in this race. So for Reshka, so not ideal certainly for the Van Amersfoort driver. Currently sitting PA at the moment. So, Fortuna leads. Rubialski just hanging on. Palang in a bit of no man's land in that third place at the moment. Then comes QVR Verstappen, who's been unable to shake Who Am I, and a surging Ghost, who looks very, very strong, just setting the fastest lap of the race and tucked right on behind the AIX car. So can he get a move done? Potentially later on, of course, the DRS train in this current fourth place scrap. So not an ideal situation if you want to get a move done, unless you are Who Am I, who still looks highly competitive, even with the damage. Picking up that slipstream towards the second chicane, feints to the inside, does not commit though, as Koru losing contact with these guys at the moment, and Reshka maybe growing impatient to try and get the move done. Further back you can see another train, this one for P9, and Lawrence leading Runes, leading Rick, leading Jackalacco, 4 of them with a blanket to be thrown over them, and still points up for grabs for all of those possessions, of course. So past halfway through this race, and who am I's got to run here on QVR Verstappen. Verstappen parking his car in the middle of the road and discouraging successfully any attack from behind, and goes getting very close to the rear wing. And I think he knew that. He had to get out of it on the brakes. Spec snap in the middle of Ascari. He's going to have to reset, try and get after these two, but his run compromised, and here comes Koru. Koru fading round the outside, and he may just get this one done. Ghost, without a real braking zone in the Parabolica, Kerber Alboreto cannot get it done on the entry. So a little error there from Ghost, unseating some of his progress, and now has to go on the attack once again, picking up the slipstream as they head down the straight once more. Verstappen in 4th place, but not showing incredible pace, I have to admit. And who am I is charging at him, heading down towards the Rettifilio, and now he's going to try and pull out down the slipstream and go for it on the brakes. He's not quite as late on the brakes though as Verstappen, who hangs it round the outside in that ART. He nearly loses it on the exit, as off the road was Koru, further back and slipping down the train. Reshka finally through. How am I now pouncing on the inside line, and they go side by side through Carver Grande. They're going to approach the next chicane at Della Roggia, and can Verstappen stay in it? Again, he is later on the brakes, trying to take that shorter run through, goes deep, loses the rear end, and the door is wide open for Huama, who snatches up that 4th place. Ghost has made an error further back. He's lost out to Reshka and to Koru, so a bit of an error-stricken race here from Ghost, dropping down to P8. So this train broken up there by a couple of errors. Koru's got work to do to try and close to Reshka now. Who am I though? Spectacular drive up to this point, trying to fend off QVR Verstappen towards Ascari. Verstappen wants no part of the move at this point, as further up in front, Rubialski under increasingly heavy pressure from Palang, and Palang, who's barely driven these cars, immediately making an impression in this race, ducking and diving in and out of the slipstream as they head towards Curva Alboreto for the 4th to last time in this sprint race, and Palang ever threatening behind the Invicta car of Rubialski. So can he pull a move now with DRS down the straight? You'd think it's probable. He is going to close the distance. He is going to go on the attack. He is going to go on the outside, and unless Rubialski can work miracles with that brake pedal, he is not going to be able to fight that off. And through goes Palang, and countering Verstappen moves back up into 4th place. He's gone a bit long, has he, in the braking zone? No. In fact, he gets that car stopped very, very effectively indeed. But these two going back and forth, and this battle looks like it is certainly long for the future, as there's a bizarre situation happening on further back as Ghost simply driving through Koru here. So there's some kind of ghosting situation that's going on here. Koru, of course, will be livid, will certainly not want to give this one up. So this is effectively a time trial race between the two of them until Ghost can eventually clear the AIX car and move up into 7th place. We'll try and bridge across to the threesome in front. He does seem to have more outstanding pace than any of these guys, but mistakes and incidents have really curtailed his efforts in this race up to this point. So just over 2 laps to go, and it is still Fortuna leading, and leading comfortably. Palang with blistering pace, and that could be a critical penalty for QVR Verstappen, with cars homing in on him. Who am I? Ghost Koru without penalties and in range. Reshka, of course, with the same penalty situation, having 3 seconds to his name. If I can somehow get that up, there you go. So there you are with 3 seconds on Reshka as well. So Amai runs massively wide in through Curva Alboreto, and may have picked up a warning for his troubles on that occasion. He still runs on nicely in 5th place and trying to charge down QVR Verstappen. They head down towards the Rettifilo, but there's no move at present for the AIX driver. Tucking into that 5th place, but with the man in front of him carrying a time penalty and the man behind him threatening him, that is all he needs to do for what would be a spectacular 4th place for the Portuguese man. Hanging out tough in there, and just needs to try and keep that car between the lines. Ghost is his nearest non-penalty threat. He is coming at these guys, but is it too little too late with just a lap and a half to go, and still not yet in that DRS range, working his way towards it as they head out of Della Roggia for the penultimate time. Lawrence with a time penalty, but at present not massively costly. Behind, looks like Runes has had an off as he loses places in succession to Jacolaco and to Silvo Bags. Silvo Bags, of course, picking up a 16 seconds worth of penalties himself, and Runes getting another. But of course it is penalties among many outside of the top 10, fighting for the last points paying possessions, of course. Runes does jump above Silvo, but losing out is Rubialski with a time penalty of his own, and he is right on the bubble to Who Am I. That's going to be a fascinating fight there. Who Am I could incredibly finish on the podium, as we've had enough further back, and Rick, the four-time champion in the F2 Cup, has shipped several places down there at Ascari, dropped outside of the points, and his only bet to get back in there is having stayed squeaky clean in terms of the penalties. So bad luck for Rick in this race as they hit the final lap with Fortuna leading. Palang has genuinely came at him, and I have to say, showing absolutely astonishing pace given his lack of experience in this particular iteration of the F2 cars. In second place and looks comfortably headed for it. He may just run out of laps to chase down Fortuna, but I tell you what, that is one impressive showing from the Campos driver, and certainly a driver to watch later on, as he is just going to get better and better in these cars. So Fortuna still leads though, and just has to avoid the same fate as his teammate in the feature race last time out at Catalonia. Just keep that car between the lines. At the moment, Rubialski is doing just enough to resist Who Am I, but it's so close, and Who Am I will get the benefit of DRS down the straight. His race is not really with the ART right in front of him. It is the man currently sitting in that third position in very small margin. Rubialski also had DRS to work with, but he is going to get held back. In fact, they both are heading through Ascari, and this is a proxy war for the last spot on this podium. It's going to be a nail-biter right down to the checkered flag, but there is virtually no doubt about the winner. So spectacular coming off of the line. That was really the key moment in this race. He's continued to charge through. He's kept it squeaky clean, and Fortuna will take home the sprint race here at Monza, and we see how the rest of the podium is going to be decided. Palang clear P2. Rubialski holds on to P3, just ahead of Who Am I with less than a tenth in it at the line. Ghost leapfrogs Verstappen on penalties, then comes Koru, Reshka, Lawrence, and Jakalaka, the two Tridents. I think we'll round out the top 10. I don't think there's anyone with penalties. Rick will jump up in front, as will JB, of course. Races to forget for both those guys, but they do take home points at the very least. Runes, Selbo, and then the two Dams cars will bring the sprint race to a close. Well, it's a Monza and a typically chaotic affair here at the Temple of Speed. And the sprint race will, of course, clear up some of the results as long as I don't remain at a black screen. We will, of course, take home the podium celebrations. And, of course, Fortuna, well, he's shown incredible pace all the way throughout this championship. Of course, though, just denied in both races in the past. Well, he was third in qualifying for the in Catalonia. He was fifth in the sprint race, working his way through the field, and he was third in the feature race, just coming in behind Verstappen and Jordan DHL. But on this occasion, he proved to be the absolute best there was out there. Terrific pace and kept it very clean. That is all you can do sometimes, and that is enough to reward him with the race win from Palang. And we'll actually bring up this graphic because it did say Ghost gets the points there, but it is Rubialski who gets third place, then Who Am I, and then Ghost in the end with Verstappen in P6. Will also be brewing that penalty, rare for him. Koru comes next, then Reshka, Lawrence, and Jakalako. Rick and JB, those are your points finishers. Runes and Silbo bags. Just seeing it out, and then the two Dams cars of Canalflow and Bacon Bear. So that is the first race in the books, and we look ahead straight towards the feature race with, of course, the qualifying grid upheld, which of course will be led by the man himself, Gigos 272 from Rick. So we'll see how that's going to unfold. We'll see how strategies are going to play out. We look forward to a sprint race where the top four in qualifying were separated by less than 0.04 of a second. So if that's any sign of things to come, we're going to be in for a cracker. So many storylines to take away from that first race, and we'll see what happens into this next race, in particular to do with the strategy. I see a lot of super softs, I believe it is actually, selected in the pit lane. But we saw a lot of split strategies at the in the feature race at Catalonia, including between the two guys who actually ended up disputing the race win, with Verstappen going for the softer compound early and getting an early lead. We'll see if the same thing is going to be resumed here in the feature race. As we get it going here at Monza, and Ghost gets away very nicely off the line as Rick is swamped. Fortuna off the line super strongly now, challenging towards the inside, going into turn one as the field barrels down, and Ghost is going to cover that one off. Round the outside, breaking very, very late as Rick tried to counter-attack after that poor start, but he's balked on the exit and cleared by QVR Verstappen. Rubialski off the road, further back, right at the rear of the field, and with plenty of work to do later on in this race. But Fortuna, again, making the great start, up in a second place, chasing down Ghost, who's opted for the supers, coming off the line, needs to establish a gap early to make that strategy worthwhile. Of course, only a one compound gap as opposed to the two compound gap between the tyre compounds last time out in Catalonia, so there will be less of a difference in the overall grip. We saw, of course, Verstappen bolting up the road when they had the benefit of those softer tyres last time out in Catalonia. But at the moment, Ghost unable to establish much of a gap. Fortuna going with him, fainting to the inside there was Rick behind QVR. Verstappen will have been frustrated with the way that start went and may have just picked up a warning for his troubles there at Ascari. Coru's got a really good run on him, heading it towards Carver Alboreto. Is he going to go for it early on, picking up that slipstream? It's going to be very close towards the braking zone, and Rick feels the need to cover off that inside line. Can he get it stopped and turned in for the exit? Coru actually understeering further behind, wasn't able to bring the car into the apex, and now has Jackalacco to contend with as they hit the main straight. So Ghost leads away but has not been able to shake off his rivals. Jackalacco with a very strong slipstream, looking towards that outside on Coru, switching back to the inside just like we saw from Ghost. Coru occupying the middle of the track, and there is contact between the two of them, and there is damage to that Trident car. Coru overshot. How much of that was because of the contact from behind? He loses out though regardless, and now has Reshka for company up on the outside of Carver Grande, and they will go side by side down towards that second chicane. Coru trying to move across to cover off. Reshka will have more grip on those supers, and he is going to make full use of it, diving to the inside, just about getting the car stopped as Coru has company from Palang, who's forced his way onto the outside, heading to Lesmo 1, darting around the outside of the first part of that complex, now into the second part. Still there, getting a bit of squeezing treatment from Coru, and they bring each other off the road. Oh my goodness me, disaster striking, and they're both spearing off into the wall. Coru and Palang coming to blows there as they just got caught in each other. That is what this contact model can do. When you touch side to side like that, Palang right to the rear of the field with damage. He took a huge hit against the wall. I think Coru's managed to avoid major damage, but massively separated from the rest of the field. Penalty for Palang, a bitter blow after such a storming sprint race for the Campos man. That is bitterly, bitterly disappointing. He drops to the rear of the field as Ghost now at the pointy end of it, but he's under immediate pressure from Fortuna, who's diving to the outside and trying to get it done on the brakes. Ghost does not want to yield. It runs deep and does run into the side of the high-tech, switches through on the exit. I think he's reluctant to take the place after all of that, but it does mean he has company from QVR Verstappen and from Rick, and it's those big four from qualifying breaking clear after the incident at De La Rogia, or at Del Rettifilo, sorry, on the last lap. Ghost trying to counter-attack to the outside of the second chicane. He's going to get pinched out there though as Rick lunges QVR. Verstappen tries to get that one done, but he hesitates on the inside apex, and Verstappen hangs on, going that long way round and keeping a hold of that third place, feigning to the inside Rick, but there's nothing doing going into Lesmo 1. Fortuna now leads the way, looking for a double here tonight, of course, after storming through the field last time out in the sprint. Leads away here in the feature race, and the super soft tire shod Ghost, the pole sitter, has not had the start to the race he was looking for. He certainly wants to be leading the way, but he can't draw near enough to get a decisive run heading into Ascari, and already seems to be lacking a bit of cornering grip in comparison to the rest of the front runners. QVR Verstappen reeling him in there through the middle of that extended chicane. So can he get a move done though for that second place? They filter through towards Curva Alboreto. Fortuna looks very, very comfortable and very, very quick up at the front. Of course, the one man who looked to be challenging him in raw pace last time out in the sprint race has been relegated to very, very last on this grid. So you sense that there's less threats from behind as Reshka immediately comes in on the very first lap. I think that was legal as Ghost now to the outside, tried to reclaim the lead, tried to get it done on the brakes. He's managed to get his car alongside but can't get it through as JB has gone out, and I'm not sure that seems to be in the pit lane, which is very uncharacteristic for JB himself, but not sure of all the circumstances of that one. Of course, up at the front it is still Fortuna leading. The DRS seems very powerful as you'd expect, and there's no chance of breaking away as QVR Verstappen does a very un-F2-like lift and coast going in to De La Rogia, but seems very comfortable sitting in that third place at the moment, as we sit on lap 4 of 15 with these top 4 trying to break clear. Jack Alacco, I have to say, is showing some really nice race pace and not conceding very much, if anything at all, and maybe hoping for more battling amongst the front runners, which may be what he's going to get as Ghost goes to the inside of Fortuna and is simply going to clear the Swede, who nearly runs into the back of him going into Ascari. Ghost does seem to lack a bit of speed through this part of the track in particular, but in the end was able to balk Fortuna and remain in that second place for the high-tech. But of course he will have the benefit of that DRS down the main straight, and again it's that old school DRS train style racing. I can't believe I'm calling that old school. Does Ghost peel into the pits though? We saw his teammate do so on the lap before, and he does indeed, as now Rick trying to challenge QVR Verstappen, tucking back into the slipstream of the ART racing car. They're both going to relay Fortuna, but not by as much of course, because he does have DRS. Rick lunging late on the brakes. Can he get that one stopped on the inside? He can, but loses the rear very, very slightly. Verstappen still in there, pinched on the inside of the second apex, and they're going to go side by side, and this is all Fortuna needs to try and break away and extend that lead up front. They still run side by side. The two Dutchmen level as they head towards Curva Grande on the inside. QVR Verstappen, is he going to stay in it? They break it virtually the same point, fighting for that apex, but Rick is around the outside and claims that second possession, reclaiming after a poor start. But what has that done to both of their winning prospects as Fortuna blasts clear up at the front of the race, and Rick has to work hard to get in that DRS. May have been a warning though for the high-tech driver. Was very close to that very harsh track limit boundary heading out of Lesmo 2. Just under 5 laps gone in the race. We've seen undercut attempts being pulled out. Huama is the last driver running on those supers behind Selvo Bags at the moment, of course, having to recover from a poor qualifying, doing his level best and up 9 spaces in this race. Some of those, of course, coming as a result of pit stops. Ghost, Reshka and Bacon Bear have all come in at this time, and JB out of the race as Runes run side by side with Rubialski on the inside of Curva Alboreto. They both hit the brakes, and Runes tries to sweep around the outside, tries to pinch the carning inside into the apex of Curva Alboreto. Can't quite pull it off, and they're going to run side by side down the main straight, and Lawrence just spectating in behind as they continue this run down towards the first chicane. Who am I pulling to the inside of Selbo is going to go through. Runes trying to break late around the outside and be brave. He manages to get a nose ahead on that curb heavy. Rubialski tried to get the switchback, but all he had was the rear wing of that Campos to meet, and he slots back into P8. Will be frustrated with the outcome of that battle. He tries to pick up the slipstream on Runes, but can't quite do it as Palang has had another off down at the rear of the field. And again, after a spectacular sprint race, it's really been a nightmare feature race thus far for that Campos. Rick has successfully managed to bridge the gap up at the front, so showing how quick he is still, the F2 GOAT in these F2 cars, and he is going to the inside of Ascari for the lead, and he's going to get there. And Fortuna, I think, content to yield that one at the moment, but the fact that Rick was able to get that clean air and immediately hunt down the high-tech car, that's very encouraging signs for his future in this race. at the front of it at the moment, with QVR Verstappen just watching in behind. So Rick recovering off of the start, second on the grid, of course, lost out to both Fortuna and QVR Verstappen, and he's managed to pick those guys both off. But now they have DRS, and they're going to try and repay the favour here. Down the main straight they go, and Rick is going to have to be looking over his shoulder on this occasion as Fortuna pulls to the inside and Verstappen follows him through. What can Rick do about it? He can respond by braking very late into the Rettifilo and gets the move done very, very nicely. Has to cope with a bit of rear end oversteer at the very, very slightly turn 2 as Chacalaco demonstrates very fittingly in behind and concedes a bit of time to the drivers in front of him. But Rick couldn't do much about the DRS on the main straight, but he did manage to resist QVR Verstappen. He looks very, very comfortable at the moment, and right back to his best in these F2 cars as we approach half distance. He still runs competitively in this leading train. Of course, these guys are predictably going to be conceding a bit of time on that undercut to Ghost. Ghost has some nice clean air to drive into and is making good use of it. We know the kind of pace that he has at this track as well. But of course, the issue with pitting onto the harder compound is that warm-up. Very, very tricky. You don't get the tyre blankets. You have your warm-up just being a little bit less potent. Once he gets them up and away, he can charge on, but that effect of warming up the tyres is far less so when you pit onto the softer compound, which is why the majority of the drivers have elected to go for the soft, which of course is paradoxically the harder compound of the two available for this feature race. We'll see if there's pit stops anytime soon up at the front. We saw the super softs falling off in terms of pace very, very quickly early on. We saw the early stops from Ghost and Rejka as Rick looks to reclaim the lead, and he's simply going to do so. Fortuna has nothing to resist, and the big closing speed of Verstappen may be the first thing on his priority list, but Verstappen not quite near enough to challenge Runes, swapping places with Silbo, trying to recover as much as he can off of the 3-second penalty, and showing some great pace out there, of course. Battled away with Rubialski and is now on the move up into that 5th place, 3 seconds ahead to Jacalaco. That space that he is going to look to drive into later on. Canal Flows came in first car, I believe, with a planned pit stop off of the soft tires and onto the super softs. Picked up a speeding penalty for his troubles as well. But yeah, that is quite a long way to go on the super softs based on what we saw from those Van Amersfoort cars earlier on in the Grand Prix. It's just 7 laps to go at the conclusion of this one, and pit stop's probably coming soon, but I'm not sure if just yet is the ideal time. So we have a 3-horse race up at the front, offset of course by Ghost on an alternate strategy. He is going to emerge probably in front of these guys, and they're going to look to hunt him down. That is going to be the dynamic late in the race. Rick, the 4-time champion, leads, but he has plenty of company from Fortuna and QVR Verstappen. So they hit the main straight for the 8th time in this race, and are we going to see pit stops? The answer seems to be a resounding no amongst all 3 of these guys. So they continue on. And Rick is really stretching at the front. He simply does seem to have incredible race pace out there. He is being pressured by Fortuna, who looks towards the inside, but can't quite punish him with a move. Koru's elected to come in off of the soft tyres further back, so demonstrating that pit stops are soon, but they're not quite yet for the race leading trio, and they have continued to stretch clear now, nearly 5 seconds from Jacalaco. So that qualifying form has definitely translated to the race. Remember that top 4 memorably covered by just 0.04 of a second. And these guys clearly with not great pace gaps between them. This fight looks like it could go down all the way to the checkered flag, but we've got to watch out for Ghost. He's taking big time out of Palang in front of him, that's for sure. But the relative to pace to the guys in front of him, I'm not quite sure. I probably should have had gap to leader up a bit earlier, but he sits just under 31 seconds shy of the race leaders. I think there's a real chance of seeing a pit stop amongst at least one of these 3 at the end of this lap. And of course, timing that undercut is going to be so key with them being so close in pace, and if you can get in a lap early, manage to go through the pain of the tyre warm-up and maybe break that DRS train which has kept these guys chained to each other throughout this race. We'll see if anyone's going to look to try and pull that pin. Rick of course can dictate from the front. Does he elect to dive to that pit lane? It seems to be not the case. I think these guys may be wary of the short lifespan of those super softs, so they head to lap 10. Surely this is a lap we've got to be considering pitting, as Fortuna now coming back towards Rick, moving to the inside. outside of the Retafilo when braking very, very late, pinched tight on that inside line. And Rick, though, conceding the first apex for the better exit later on. Of course, these guys, they don't want to cost each other too much. They know that Ghost is still a threat, and it looks as though Fortuna is just going to cleanly run away with that race lead for the moment. Rick happy, it seems, to just tuck into that second place. He does have the spanners up. You see, he does have a planned pit stop, as do the other two. So we'll see if anyone's going to try and go opposite, but splitting it 11-4 with just 4 laps on those super softs at the end, I would say is not the ideal strategy. Of course, with the track more rubbered in, you will get a bit more out of those super softs in terms of life than the drivers did at the start of the race on those tyres. So I would expect that's going to be the idea. I can fully expect these guys to pit as Bacon Bear is the second retiree from this feature race. Just calling it quits in the pit lane, sadly. Rick did not get a great run through Ascari. And QVR Verstappen, of course, and if these guys are racing with that pit lane in mind, Verstappen being very close to Rick is going to be very unsettling for the Prema drivers. They head into Curva Alboreto. Sure, I fully expect all 3 of these drivers to peel into the pit lane at the end of this lap. But one man actually electing not to do so, and maybe purely because these guys in front of him have gone in, and he decides he needs to create an advantage some other way, going for an offset on those tyres. Ruins with a 10-second time penalty coming into the pit lane. So easy to do at this track, but such a costly and always feels like an avoidable error to make. So super softs going on for these guys. Where will they emerge? Fortuna coming out in front of Rick, and I do think there was a bit of a delay getting out there for Rick. It is difficult to get these cars off the pit line sometimes. Down the main straight they go. There's Palang, and there is Ghost. So there is the margin that he has to work with in front of that chasing pack. Fortuna up to speed. Rick up behind him now. They just about get out in front of Reshka. That's very key, of course. If Reshka managed to get it through, then as Ghost's teammate, he certainly would have fought them very, very hard. Ghost has just over 3 seconds. Quite frankly, I'm not sure if that's going to be enough. He's given himself some kind of strategic threat, though, in this race. They are going to have to hunt him down. They can't sit around and waste time. That much is certainly for sure. He is going to be hoping, and I imagine expecting, Palang to come in at the conclusion to this 11th lap. He's rapidly homing in on the Campos car, and certainly does not want to be running into a car holding him up. Not when he needs to resist. Fortuna and Rick only 3/10 back so far. Of course, again, these guys do have to contend with the tyre warm-up, and typically, Verstappen! Verstappen long into the pit lane, and a 10-second time penalty is surely going to take him out of contention for this race win. Gutting for the man who led the championship going into this round, and that championship lead, I'm sure, is in huge, huge jeopardy further on down the line. My oh my, that's such a key error. Of course, we saw Jordan DHL getting a critical track limits penalty, which cost him the win in the feature race last time out in Catalonia. But that's a better blow to QVR Verstappen's race, and of course, the undercut may compound some of that as Fortuna and Rick come at him. He hasn't lost very much, and in fact, Fortuna not showing any pace advantage really on Ghost at all on the previous lap. Rick behind him, huge snap, heading through turn 2. And that will delay his advance, as he may have the pace advantage on the man in front of him. And really this lap, as Palang gets well, actually jumps out of the way for Ghost, and Ghost will be massively thankful for that, and he can just continue on his way, seemingly with far more of a chance of hanging on at the front than I personally expected. Considering those super softs they are going to wear, they should still be outpacing Ghost, but maybe that tyre, I mean, Ghost didn't look overly impressive at the very start of the race. Maybe that tyre just doesn't quite have the grip. I'm not sure. Rick does seem to have a pace advantage on Fortuna. I think he has looked a shade faster than the high-tech all throughout this race. And maybe he feels as though he needs to try and be the one to try and chase down Ghost. We shall see. But Ghost, at the moment, with 3 laps to go, looks fairly comfortable up at the front. And as I was saying that, Rick is off! Rick is off at Ascari! And the 4-time champion spins around in that Prema car. Just as I was saying, he had the pace to potentially go after Ghost. Those chances dashed in a blink of an eye. And Rick dropping right down outside of the point. Not outside of the points, outside of the top 10, at least on track. Oh, that's such a gutting error for the Dutchman. after showing such incredible pace throughout this race. In the end, he's not going to be rewarded. He has Rubialski right there with him. As Palang stays out yet another lap. I'm not quite sure of the wisdom of this strategy. Fortuna is reeling Ghost in, but dare I say, not quick enough. And Ghost, well, he had a massive opportunity in the Tier 1 race at this track, of course, just a couple of days ago, and it fell away from him on the very final lap of the race. At the moment, he is, I would say, headed for it, and clearly validating that it was simply just a case of the Super Softs just not being that great of a tyre. He's not out the woods just yet, but currently Palang is not jumping out of these guys' way the same way that he did to Ghost. DRS, I think, will dig his grave though on this occasion, as Fortuna picks up that slipstream, moves to the inside. He will try and get back to the racing lane for Ascari and does so, and Verstappen will be frustrated as he watches the man in front of him get a car between himself and the man he's chasing, but ultimately I think that was Palang picks up a penalty on the outside of Ascari, but of course the main frustration for QVR Verstappen is simply going to be that pit lane spading penalty. Reshka and Who Am I are both comfortably in range. Who Am I has made incredible progress in both races. Really, you'd think what could have been without that qualifying blunder, but Ghost leads the way and still chased by Fortuna. He does set the fastest lap of the race, but with 2 seconds of a buffer and 2 laps. Ghost is looking pretty ominous up at the front as Palang just trying to hang on, doesn't quite have the grip, and Verstappen goes through into that 3rd place. And Palang not quite sure about what he's doing. I hope he does realise there is a mandatory pit stop in this race. So with just over 2 laps to go, he is still out there and just continuing on as we do have action down at Doretta Filo further back. Runes and Jackalacco swapping places further back. Ditto for Silbo and Lawrence. Lawrence in that second Trident, trying to get the move done on the Rodin car, getting squeezed towards the inside of the second chicane, is still going to stay in it. Hops over the curb on the inside. Silbo backs, just loses the rear, stays side by side as they run towards Lesbo, one together. Into the apex of the corner they go. Silbo's still pinched, but he muscles his way through, loses the rear of the car on the exit, and still side by side. Lawrence trying to hang it around the outside, and what a move that is from Lawrence, C1989, but he's got pressure now from Rubialski. He does have DRS of his own though to try and defend as Rick slotting to the inside as Silbo just gets swabbed towards Ascari, trying to hang it round the outside of the Prema. They go wheel to wheel. Silbo tries to get the better run on the exit, does have the better momentum at the very least, hangs on to P11. But still, as Palang does finally come into the pits, Ghost though clearing away up at the front, and well, I was doubting the wisdom of that strategy to go on those super softs early on. Is Verstappen a big slide out of Doretta Filo, may just give up that 2nd place. Of course, he's fighting for time more so than possession, and battling with Fortuna here is going to be a time loss that he simply does not want to concede. He will try and fight it, or will he back it off? Let's see. Of course, he is racing for time and not for possession, and he does indeed elect to concede that possession, finding a way, trying to minimise the damage of that 10-second penalty. But Ghost, 1.9 seconds clear at the front. I thought that he was going to get reeled in, I have to be completely honest, but those super softs just simply are not the race tyre to be on here at Monza. He is led away, and really that first stint when it looked as though he was failing to break away and struggling to shake some of the drivers in behind him, he in the end has that strategy has proven to be a bit of a masterclass. The soft tyre is simply stronger, and he has used that to full advantage, stretching away here on this last lap, and goes, well, it was a brilliant, beautiful lap to take pole position for this race. In the sprint race, of course, battling through from the back, he had an incident-shod race. He pulled off an amazing move on Koru, which may be the moment of the night. But here, he has delivered a strategic masterclass, and Ghost wins the feature race here in Monza. Over the line behind, it will be 2nd place to Fortuna. Verstappen will try and hold on for what possessions. Reshka caps off a stunning race for the Van Amersfoort team here at the feature race in Monza. Who Am I? Another epic recovery drive to 4th place. Verstappen has to settle for 5th. He does just about see off Jackalacco. Rubialski comes next, then Lawrence, Rick and Koru. Runes, Silbo Bags, Palang and Canalflo, all finishers will get points in this race. But wow, that was such an intriguing strategic race. I really thought that Ghost was in trouble at half distance, of course, went for that undercut, but yeah, the super soft tyre is just not an effective race tyre, and the fact maybe the story to take from that first stint is not that he failed to break away with, in theory, a stronger tyre in terms of out and out pace. Maybe the takeaway from that race is actually that he minimised his losses on an inferior tyre very, very well in those early laps, and that was the difference maker. What driving from Ghost here tonight. He clearly loves this track. He's had excellent pace here all week, and he is finally rewarded with the ultimate prize, that race victory. My oh my. And well, we'll see what this does to the championship standings further through. How much will that affect QVR Verstappen? That late penalty came into this leading the way. Of course, his nearest rival, Jordan DHL, not here tonight. And I believe he did outscore Who Am I over the course, although I'm not entirely sure about that. We'll tidy up some of the points later on, but yeah, one thing is for sure, Ghost put on a masterclass here tonight. There it is, Fortuna second, Reshka third. Who Am I? Well, a penalty costing him what would have been a sensational podium. He settles for fourth place, but you have to say 2 fourth places after that qualifying is a mega result. Verstappen comes next, then Jakalako, Rubialski, Lawrence, Rick and Koru, the top 10. Then comes Silva, Bags, Palang, Canalflo, and Runes. Not sure what's going on with the gaps there, but with Runes being down in 14th place, Bacon Bear and JB not seeing out the checkered flag. So I think that is going to just about do it again. Again, I don't quite have the effort nor the quite the arithmetic skills nor the memory skills to put all of the point scoring together off of those 2 races, but certainly a costly error for QVR Verstappen in a race where he, I believe, came over the line in second position. I don't think there was anything that could be done about Ghost up at the front. But yeah, this is certainly going to be a very open championship. We saw a 3-man show, really, last time out in Catalonia between Verstappen, Jordan, DHL and Fortuna. But here was very, very competitive. You would expect that at Monza. But yeah, those... well, it was a 4-man show in the feature race, but a very, very competitive sprint race where we saw multiple contenders, Palang being so fast in the back end of that race, and 2 incredible comeback drives from Who Am I, who, if I had to give a driver of the day, I would be very torn between him and Ghost, but considering as well that I just barely gave Verstappen the nod over him last week, I think I will opt for Who Am I for 2 epic comeback drives in those 2 races, and clearly showing himself to be a contender in the future of the F2 Cup. Season 8 is off to a cracking start, and I can't wait to see more of it, so keep an eye out for the future here in the F2 Cup. And of course, there's far more action throughout the week here in APPF1, of course, no less than tomorrow for Tier 3 with Lawrence and Kevin. Tier 2 with myself and Ghost. Tier 1 I think is hopefully going to be covered by Sumo Gilligan, but well, I think he is penciled in for full time for that season, and unfortunately I won't be able to make next Saturday, next Sunday, sorry, but as for myself, so hopefully we can find another streamer for the F2 Cup, which of course this great championship certainly does deserve. But I think for the moment that is going to just about do it. Next time out we will be at the Miami circuit. Very, very different, of course, from what we've seen tonight, and very different prospects up at the front and the rear of the field. So make sure to tune in for that. The F2 Cup moves to Miami next. Be sure not to miss it. But until next time, it is goodbye.